Hello and welcome to International Relations Weekly Series. So in this series I am making videos on weekly basis and not on daily basis. So you must be wondering why. So I am here to tell you that international relations development happens over a period, and it is better to make videos on weekly basis so that I can collect all the information regarding a particular news and present it in a very tabulated manner, right? So so let us not delay and start the series. And first thing I would like to tell that I would like to make a request that this is my very first two videos on this series, and I need your support. So please kindly like and share and subscribe to my channel, and your support will means a lot to me. So please help, and let us begin. So first thing that I would like to make you inform that on Indian foreign policy there is an Act East policy. So Look East policy was launched in 1990s, right? So this was updated to Act East policy in 2014 during the NDA government time. So recently our naval ships had been deployed to Indonesia and Singapore for port calling and joint exercises. So port calling means that naval ship visits other countries' naval ports and they have a lot of interactions there. And joint exercises are the military exercises that two navies perform with each other. This increases the interoperability. Right. So these keywords need to be remembered, and these are the part and parcel of our Act East policy. So if you look at the Look East policy, such naval deployment, such naval port calling and joint exercises were not present at that time. But after Act East policy, these has become the part and parcel of the same policy. So keep it in mind. And if there is any question, if somebody asks you what is the difference between Look East and Act East, then you can tell that naval deployment has become the part of Act East, right? So let us move on to the bilateral relations. So bilateral relations means relations between two countries. Remember this. So it can be with our neighbors, it can be with other countries. India and its neighbor are the syllabus of UPSC CSE examination. So all these informations will be relevant for your examinations also. So what was in news that India and Pakistan came in a Indian Express opinion page, and the heading was a time for para diplomacy. So the writer were none other than C. Raja Mohan, who writes very frequently on this newspaper, right? So let us talk about what is in this news. So election is going on in India, and writer has been studying various parties' manifestos with respect to the international relations. So there is a state government party in Punjab, Akali Dal, which talks about swapping lands to get the Kartarpur Sahib, which is a holy place for the Sikh religion, and he this party wants to make a special economic zone on the borders with Pakistan so that two countries can cooperate with each other. So on this, a writer talks about para diplomacy. What is para diplomacy? Para diplomacy means diplomacy done by authorities who are other than union authorities. Means if something is being done by state government or by panchayat raj or local authorities to interact with other countries, this comes under the para diplomacy, right? So on this, writer mentions that cooperation with neighbors fails sometimes due to central or state political priorities. For example, Tista water issue was failed due to West Bengal government, right? And Akali Dal's manifesto, if central government act on this and supports this, then there will be a peaceful cooperation with the Pakistan. So in this way, para diplomacy can help increase our relation with our neighbors. So whenever you want to write in a way forward for improving relation with Pakistan, then you can mention para diplomacy. So this was the news, and now let us talk about India's relation with the United Kingdom that was in news recently. What is happening that Rishi Sunak has announced election on 4th June in United Kingdom. So during the time of election many things happen, many things are done to please the domestic audience. So anti-immigrant phenomena is been going on, that people domestically are not liking immigrants because they think that their job is being snatched away by them, by the immigrants, and whatever violence is happening, whatever bad things happening, anti-social activities are happening are due to the immigrants only. So the visa that Indians used to take, that is graduate route visa, government is planning, UK government is planning to scrap it. So these things are done to gain the vote during the election. So these things are happening in UK, and sometimes even the Pakistani audience, the Pakistani people who are the citizens of the Britain, they also influence the British leaders, and they often take stands which are which are not in favor of India, right? So these things too often happens in United Kingdom. So keep this in mind. So these things are happening there, and graduate route visa has been used by Indians to stay in UK. Now this visa route may get scrapped because of this bipartisan politics, right? So these things you need to remember. And what other things happening in Europe, that is Russia Ukraine war continuing, and Putin recently said that he is willing to cease fire, means war will stop if the Western countries and Ukraine takes the de facto border as the line of control basically, right? So Putin is willing to cease fire now, but whatever the land has been grabbed by Russia will remain with the Russia. So this is the caveat, and one should remember that Kharkiv is in news. So please remember that Kharkiv is in Ukraine, and you need to remember the maps and locations of the Ukraine. So news was that Russia striked on the Kharkiv. So Kharkiv map you should see in the last video. I have also shown the map of Ukraine. Please go to that video and see the map. And now moving on to West Asian politics. So what has happened in Iran is that Iran's president's helicopter crashed and he passed away, including the foreign minister, right? So Iran leader died in a plane crash when he was returning from Azerbaijan. So this thing happened, and Indian government has declared state mourning, and our flag was on the half mast at the Rashtrapati Bhavan. So this shows that Indian government sees ties with Iran very important. So These things should be remembered while writing answer on India-Iran relations. So let us move on to next question, next news. So Gaza is being pounded by air strikes by Israel. So Nusairat refugee camp is in news, and US Saudi is discussing semi-final deal. So let us see what these are. So they are discussing a security pact between US and Saudi Arabia, which is known as semi-final deal. So in this deal there is a will for two-state solution for Israel and Palestine, and it is also a security pact for US and Saudi Arabia. So all these things you should remember, and the map should be seen. And in the last video also I have shown you the map of Gaza and the different refugee camps there. You should remember all the refugee camps like this, that Nusairat refugee camp is being used. So if question come like match the following and there is Nusairat refugee camp, then you should match it with the Gaza, right? So in this way questions are being asked in the examination, and you should prepare like this only. So let us move to the next news. So ICC, International Criminal Court, has requested a warrant against the Israel. So these things are happening, and war crime allegations are being put against the Israel, and Netanyahu has also brought a video in which he is saying that Israelis officers, Israeli leaders will be criminalized by ICC, and it will be very difficult for them to visit around the globe because they might get arrested because of this only. So in this case ICC become important. So let us talk about ICC. So International Criminal Court is very different from the World Court. World Court or International Court of Justice. So World Court and ICJ is a part of United Nations, and International Criminal Court is different. It is basically an intergovernmental organization, and it is situated in Hague, Netherlands, right? And it is the first and only permanent international court with jurisdiction to prosecute individuals for international crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, crimes of aggression. So these points are very important to remember, and it is not part of United Nations, so you should remember this. It is very distinct from ICJ, as I have already said. ICJ is an organ of United Nations and ICC is not. So this thing you need to remember. ICC, International Criminal Court, was established in 2002 after the Roman Statute. It is based on Rome Statute, and it is considered as major step towards justice and innovation in international law and human rights. So whenever you are writing a answer on international laws or human rights, or you are talking about justice, you can mention ICC, International Criminal Court. And it has faced a number of criticism because it is sometimes accused of Eurocentrism and racism, because it has given a lot of judgment which are against African nations and very few judgments which are against the Europeans. So these things you need to remember. And India is not a signatory or party of International Criminal Court, so India is out of this, right? And other thing that came in news on 23rd was that Norway, Spain and Ireland has recognized Palestine. So earlier 143 countries used to recognize the Palestine, but now Norway, Spain and Ireland has also decided to recognize the Palestine. So all these green countries are recognizing the state of Palestine, including India. So you need to remember this. So let us see what else is in news. So ICJ orders Israel to immediately halt assault on Rafah, let it aid. So Rafah, as we have seen in the last video, that Rafah is a southern border city of the Gaza, which shares border with the Egypt. So ICJ is requesting, ordering Israel to immediately halt its assault. So you need to now study what is world court, because we have seen ICC already. Now world court has also become important. So what is ICJ? International Court of Justice is the world court. It is colloquially known as world court. Is the only international court that adjudicate general disputes between nation state, means countries, and it gives advisory opinion to international legal issue. It gives advisory opinion to United Nations Security Council also, right, or other UN bodies. And it is not binding when it is giving the advisory opinions, right? And it is one of the six principal organ of the United Nations, and it is also located in Hague. So International Criminal Court is in Hague, but it is not the sixth principal organ. It is just an intergovernmental, and India is not the signatory or party of ICC, but whereas World Court is the sixth organ within the sixth organ of the United Nations, and India is therefore a part of this body, and Indian judges have been elected in the judiciary body of the ICJ. So talking about the history of ICJ, it is a successor of the Permanent Court of International Justice, which was established in 1920 by the League of Nations. So before United Nations there was League of Nations, but due to the failure of League of Nations during the Second World War, United Nations was formed, and after this Permanent Court of International Justice became International Court of Justice or World Court, right? So these things you need to remember, and it consists of a panel of judges, that is of 15 judges, and they are elected by UN General Assembly and Security Council for a 9-year term. Okay. So both UNGA and UNSC are the electorate of this panel's election, right? And there was one news on space tourism, so I have mistakenly added it in IR news. So basically an Indian is going to the space, and he is Gopi Thotakura, and he is going by the Amazon's Jeff Bezos company, whose name is Blue Origin. So Blue Origin is the company which is taking the Indian guy to the space. So this is in news. And from Africa, news is coming that DRC Congo, there has been coup attempted. So this was also in examination of UPSC CSC, that what are the countries where in news due to the coup attempts. So coup has been attempted in DRC again. So this is in news, and army was able to stop this attempt. So this was in news. So let us see the map of DRC. So this is a Congo river which flows and drains into the Atlantic. So Congo river you need to remember, and its earlier name was Zaire. So even the country's name was Zaire at one point of time. So let us see the neighbors of Democratic Republic of Congo. So on the north side there is South Sudan, there is Central African Republic, there is Congo, and then on the south there is Angola, there is Zambia, there is Tanzania, and then there is in the east are Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. So you need to remember these locations, and these are the Great Lakes of Africa, the water bodies as you can see. So these things you need to remember, and from this highland, three rivers of Africa flows. These are the highland area, and one is Congo River, which drains into the Atlantic. One is Zambezi River, where should I write? Zambezi, which flows in the Indian Ocean, and then there is Nile River, which drains into Mediterranean, which goes on the south north direction. So these things you need to remember about Africa. So let us move on to the next news. So it is about the great power politics that is happening around the world, and there was an editorial in Indian Express which is on Putin and Xi. So recently Vladimir Putin, the de facto ruler of Russia, so president of Russia, he has visited China. So Xi Jinping is the ruler of the Chinese Communist Party, and he is the de facto ruler there. So there was the meeting of these leaders were the 43rd meeting, right? And there has been a Sino-Russian intent. So you need to know this, that Russia and China are collaborating with each other to tackle United States of America. So all this news says that because of this collaboration, the cooperation of India Russia gets jeopardized, because India expect Russia to help it during any uncertainty with China. But because of the all-weather relationship between Russia and China, India need to diversify its imports, its dependency on the West also, because Russia will become the junior partner of the China eventually, right? So these things need to be remembered, and they have called their alliance as Alliance Without Limits, and they have talked about multipolar world. But multipolar world, according to them, is the reduction of the dominance of the United States. It does not talk about there will be a position for India also. So multipolar world according to India and multipolar world according to China is very different. China talks about multipolar world but unipolar Asia. China wants its hegemony in Asia, but would India like this? India also wants multipolar Asia, right? So that India has also its place, rightful place in the Asian region. But this is in odds with the policy of China. So these things you need to remember. So great power politics is going on between the great powers like Russia, China, and America. So use these keywords. And India wants multipolar Asia. These journalists know that India wants multipolar Asia. So if you are a candidate for examination which is giving you a paper on IR, so you need to know this also. So there is a growing narrative that Russia-China ties is a threat to India, and India can no longer trust the Russians. So therefore India should strategically embrace the West, which is dominated by US. So India should become an ally of de facto ally of US. So there is one section of our power elites, means the leaders or the intellectuals, who wants this, right? And another news is that Yellen says that US and Europe must respond jointly to China's overcapacity. So what does she means that Chinese state is providing subsidies and pushing manufacturing in sectors which are in competition with the Western countries. Suppose that there is electric car. So electric car is also made by Tesla and is also being made by the Chinese company. But Chinese company is backed by the state of China. State of China has money, so they can sell the 10 rupee car at 5 rupees price because of this subsidy. So this will outcompete the Tesla, that is the US company. So US has become intimidated because of this. So they wanted to call on China, they wanted to tackle this from China, that China has developing overcapacity, so this need to be tackled. So even the G7 meeting that is happening right now between the ministers and the central governors, central bank governors, so they are also talking about this only, that China's state is providing subsidy and it has overcapacity in manufacturing that will outcompete the Western countries manufacturers, right? So US and EU countries are reacting to protect their businesses. So Yellen, who is the US Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, she is calling for responding jointly with the Europeans against the Chinese overcapacity. So this was in news. And now talking about multilateralism, where many countries comes together. So UNCCD has brought a report which says that Indian tribals and pastoralists need to have the better access to the land, and their rights should be recognized. So let's talk about UNCCD. UNCCD Convention to Combat Desertification is a convention to combat desertification and mitigate the effect of droughts, right, through different programs. And it came from the Rio's conference which happened in 1992, and it came also from Agenda 21 which was adopted in 1994 and it entered into force in 1996, right? So UNCCD came from there, and convention is based on the principles of participation, partnership and decentralization. So these are the backbone of good governance and sustainable development. So these words can be used anywhere. If you are talking about Panchayati Raj, then you can also mention that it is good for good governance, right, and sustainable development, because there is participation, there is partnership and there is decentralization. So these things you need to remember. Ibrahim Thion is the Under Secretary General of the United Nations and the UNCCD's Executive Secretary. So Ibrahim Thion name should be remembered with respect to UNCCD, and it can be asked in state level examinations. So please keep this in mind. So another news was that BIMSTEC has achieved a regional milestone, that BIMSTEC charter has came into force, right, in 20 May 2024. So let's talk about BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC is a multi-sectoral technical economic cooperation of the 7 South Asian and Southeast Asian nations, right? So these countries are Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Thailand. So from Southeast Asia, 2 countries are there. First is Myanmar and another is Thailand, and permanent secretariat is in Dhaka, Bangladesh. So you need to remember. So from the SAARC country, you can see that Pakistan is unavailable here, Afghanistan is not there, and Maldives is not there. India is there, Nepal is there, Sri Lanka is there, Bangladesh, Bhutan is there, Myanmar, Thailand is there. So you need to remember this, which makes BIMSTEC different from the SAARC. So all these things were in news. So if you liked my videos, then please like, subscribe and share my videos, and it will be very helpful to me if you give me some feedbacks and do these things. So Thank you for your time. Have a good day.